The Best of Clarence Day, God and My Father, by Clarence Day, Jr. My Mother's Discovery. In spite of his warlike behavior in our hours of worship, Father seemed to me one of the mainstays and chiefs of the church. On weekdays he was a layman, struggling violently with his environment, his business, his family, his home life, the cook and the coffee, and in general with the natural heat of his feelings among all these antagonists. But on Sundays, after breakfast was over, and the coffee and its sins had departed, and Father had peacefully finished his morning cigar, he put on his shining high hat, and he marched us to church. And there, on the end of our pew, was a silver plate with his name on it, and the organ music was rolling and solemn, and Father was a pillar of God. I felt sure that he was a very good pillar too, and better than most. Better than Mr. Gregg, for instance, who was the church treasurer, and who was a devout but slouchy old Christian with an overdressed wife. And as good as Colonel Hamilton, well-groomed, military-looking, patrician, who seemed to a little Episcopalian like me the very essence of Christianity. But these other pillars were vestrymen, and Father was not. They seemed to belong more than he did. Father didn't happen to want to be a vestryman, but he couldn't be anyhow. I don't recall how I became aware of it, but there was an obstacle. And another thing, there was a mysterious rite called communion, with soft music in it, and a great deal of whispering and murmuring by Dr. Garden, amid which the congregation, a few at a time, left their pews and crowded irregularly forward and knelt at the altar. Dr. Garden then said something to each of them, and gave each one a drink, a very small drink from a very large goblet of gold. When all of that group had had theirs, they walked back to their seats, and others passed forward and knelt. I could see the soles of their shoes. Colonel Hamilton had his soles blacked, and they looked trim and elegant. But Mr. Gregg's were almost worn out, and as stubby as mine. This rite came after the regular service. It was a separate matter, and less than half of the congregation stayed for communion. Mr. Gregg always stayed. Colonel Hamilton was more independent. He only stayed when he liked. Mother stayed as regularly as Mr. Gregg did, but Father, not once. There was some tension between Father and Mother about this, I felt, but they didn't discuss it before me. She never asked him to stay. She never even asked if he were going to. It was understood that he wasn't. He walked home ahead with us boys, feeling as lively as we did, and Mother arrived 20 minutes later for our 1 o'clock Sunday dinner. Once in a while she was half an hour later, and Father said, "Damn." The principal course at our Sunday dinners was a great roast of beef, surrounded by fat roasted potatoes and rich Yorkshire pudding. They were all piping hot, and when Father carved the beef it ran juices. We were not allowed to play with our toys on Sundays, and we had to wear our best clothes. But that dinner was some compensation. Afterward we read or took walks. There were no weekends out of town in those days, and golf was almost unknown to us. Father usually read Hume and Smollett's History of England, with his head nodding more and more over it, and his cigar going out. I think it must have been on one of those long afternoons that Mother, when she thought I was old enough, explained about Father. She said nobody could go to communion who had not been confirmed. Everybody was baptized as a baby to make him a Christian. That was the first step. But to be a full member of the church, one had to learn the creed and the catechism, and go up to the altar, and promise to do and believe everything that his godfathers had promised for him, and the bishop would then lay his hands on him so he could go to communion. She said she hoped I would be confirmed when I was 13 or 14, but it must be of my own free will and choice, for it was a great step to take. Father hadn't taken it yet, she confided. She didn't say why. I took Mother's prayer book upstairs with me and looked up the baptism service to see what my godfather had committed me to with his promises. Mr. Courier was my only living godfather. He had gone pretty far. He had renounced the devil and all his works on my behalf, and the pomps and vanities of this wicked world, and the sinful lusts of the flesh. Mr. Courier was such a good old man he had probably thought nothing of it, but I wondered whether I would ever feel up to renouncing all that. I asked Mother a great many questions about confirmation, and from what she said, I saw that I'd have to be confirmed by and by. I couldn't get out of it. It wouldn't be fair to Mr. Courier for me to refuse and leave him responsible to God for my sins all my life. I looked over the catechism. It was long. It would be hard to learn all that by heart. I inquired whether Father knew the catechism, but Mother said not to ask questions. My head at once felt full of questions, such as who Father's godfather was, and how much longer he'd wait, and whether he didn't ever get cross about Father's delay. But it made Mother cry when I asked these. She said I would know by and by. She said Father had been very busy and had had to work very hard, and that she hoped he would be confirmed soon, when he had a little more time. Mother evidently had her heart set on Father's learning the catechism and letting the bishop lay his hands on him, but Father didn't feel like it. And the rest of the story, as I heard it later, was this. When Mother married Father, she had naturally supposed that he was a good churchman. She had asked him what church he belonged to, and he had replied, the Episcopal. But as time went on, she found that his association with it was vague. Father's parents had been so fond of Mother, and she had liked them so much, that it hadn't even occurred to her to cross-question them about Father's upbringing. His mother was a saint on earth, sweet and good. Everyone loved her. His father was a newspaper publisher, philosophic and humorous. But it turned out that Grandpa's favorite authors were Voltaire and Shakespeare. He read almost nothing else but his newspaper, and he had no use for religion. He had been brought up so strictly that he had got his fill of it, and had dismissed the whole subject. Father had accordingly run about and done as he pleased. It was only through one of his schoolboy friends that he happened to go to a Sunday school. This school gave a party of some kind at which they served cake. It was a good cake, and whenever they had it, Father went to that Sunday school. When he grew older and decided that it was the proper thing to go to church sometimes, it seemed that he had picked out an Episcopal church for this purpose. Not being a free thinker like my grandfather, he had approved of religion. But beyond this, he hadn't looked into it. He had seen no necessity. This rudimentary and semi-automatic approach to the church, as by a kind of molecular attraction, seemed pathetic to Mother. She was maternal, and she was compassionately eager to help Father in and make him as good a churchman as anyone. But Father felt he was already in, and to be confirmed was unnecessary. He didn't understand at all clearly what confirmation was anyhow. He declared it was only some folderol. He refused to be bothered with it. This was the root of all those conversations about whether he'd go to heaven, when Mother said that to be on the safe side he ought to be confirmed first, and Father said that getting him into heaven was her affair. But that wasn't the worst. I don't know when Mother found out about the whole truth about Father, but I don't think she knew it when she and I had had those first talks. If not, it may have been my asking questions that led her to ask more herself, and thus to stumble on a strange and upsetting discovery. Still, the discovery would have been almost sure to come some day. It was mere luck it hadn't come sooner. Nobody had purposefully hidden Father's story from Mother, least of all poor Father himself. He never kept anything from her. Not that he didn't try to, but he was far too unguarded to have any secrets. I remember Father once had his pocket picked on the streetcar coming home. As an old New Yorker, born and bred, he was ashamed of this incident. He was also provoked, and when he unlocked the front door and came in, he was swearing to himself in loud whispers. Mother was upstairs in her room. She heard Father talking away to himself in the front hall as he hung up his coat. "Damned rascals, if I ever catch them!" He flung his cane in the rack. "Not a word. I shan't say a word about it," he went on to himself. He stamped up the stairs, muttering, "Yes, too much talk in this house." "Well, Vinny," he said to Mother, and sat himself down by the fire, in what he evidently meant to be an impenetrable and innocent silence. "Claire," Mother said sharply. "What is it?" "Claire, what's the matter with you? What has happened?" "Damnation," Father said. "What's happened? How do you know that it's happened? There's entirely too much talk in this house. A man can't have any privacy in his own home. That's what it comes down to. I had my pocketbook stolen. I had my pocketbook stolen. That's what happened. Are you satisfied now?" "Your pocketbook? Oh, why did you let them?" "Let them?" said Father. "Good God! They picked my pocket on the street car. I can tell you I had it when I left the club." "Oh, Claire, dear, how could you? You must be getting old. Did you have the cook's wages in it?" Father sprang from his chair in a fury and left the room, saying, "I knew you'd ask that. Yes, damn it, I had the cook's wages. I want this prying to stop." And afterwards, when he came down to dinner, he was bursting to tell the whole story, just how a young whippersnapper had jostled him, and what he had said to the fellow while a Confederate had stolen his money and jumped off the car. He added with a baffled look at Mother that he didn't know how she found out things. "She finds out every damn thing I do," I heard him say later in his bathroom, in honest bewilderment. He usually chose the bathroom at night for his private communings, although an air shaft connecting with the other bathrooms carried his words through the house. A man who was so unself-conscious would have betrayed his religious shortcomings completely and promptly if he himself had known the facts. Grandpa knew the facts, but they had seemed to him of no importance. So it wasn't until Mother chanced to ask him directly one day what church Father had been baptized at, that Grandpa said Father had never been baptized at all. I doubt if I can even imagine what a shock this was to Mother. This was in the conventional 1880s, when women led sheltered lives, and when men in general conformed to religious requirements. Mother must have felt that she could hardly believe her own ears. She had taken it for granted that everyone in a civilized country was baptized as soon as he was born, as a matter of course. She had never met or known about any man, woman, or child who had even dreamed of not being baptized. It was simply unheard of. Why, all the poor Indians in Mexico belonged to some church. Even in the wildest lands anywhere, there were so many missionaries that every half-naked savage with any luck at all seemed to get baptized. Yet Here was her own husband. Grandpa explained to her that his idea had been to leave father free. Let the boy grow up and decide all such things for himself. As to Grandma, well, she always spoke of Grandpa as Mr. Day, and she was surprised to hear Mother take on so about this. She said to her gently and patiently, "But, Vinny, dear child, that was the way Mr. Day wished it, and he's generally right." Mother didn't feel this way at all. She thought Grandpa was wrong about lots of things, and she always told him to his face. Grandpa liked nothing better. She was young and impulsive and pretty and very direct, and he used to egg her on by arguing with her in the most outrageous ways he could think of. But this time there wasn't any argument, so far as I ever heard. Mother couldn't wait. She hurried home to father with her terrible news, supposing that as soon as he heard it, he would be baptized at once. There was some excuse for not being confirmed, since not everyone did it, but nobody could defy God to the extent of not. Excuse me. Let me read that sentence again. There was some excuse for not being confirmed, since not everyone did it, but nobody would defy God to the extent of not at least being baptized. She had her second great shock when he flatly refused. He was dressing for dinner at the moment, and he said she must not interrupt him. Although he was surprised and displeased to hear he hadn't been christened, he at once declared that nothing could be done to correct matters now. Mother cried when she talked with me about it and couldn't give me his reasons. She didn't seem to think that he had any. He was just being obstinate. But I was sometimes allowed to be present when they debated the matter, and this gave me a picture of some sort of his state of mind. "I simply can't understand why you won't be baptized," Mother said. "Claire, dear, tell me, aren't you a Christian?" "Why, confound it, of course I am a Christian," Father roundly declared. "A damned good Christian, too. A lot better Christian than those psalm-singing donkeys at church." "Oh, hush, Claire." Mother always was terrified when he bordered on blasphemy. Now to say hush to father was like pouring kerosene on a fire. I repeatedly saw Mother try to quench his flames in this way, and every such effort only made him blaze higher, far higher. Yet she tried it again the next time. Neither she nor father seemed to study the other one's nature. They each insisted the other one's nature should work in some way it didn't. I never once saw either of them observe the other in a calm, detached spirit to see how his or her ego operated and how to press the right button. Instead, they invariably charged at each other full tilt, and learned unwillingly and dimly, if at all, by collisions. So Mother said, "Hush," to father, and the conflagration was on. And father, being maddened by the kerosene, swore more and more, and declared that there was no need whatever for him to go and get baptized, and that he was quite as good a Christian as Owen Lloyd Garden. "But if you won't be baptized," Mother wailed, "you aren't a Christian at all." Father said he would not be baptized, and he would be a Christian. He begged to inform Mother he would be a Christian in his own way. In her desperation, Mother went to Dr. Garden and pledged him to secrecy, and revealed to him the horrible fact that father had never been baptized. Dr. Garden was greatly astonished, but said he would attend to it. He was still more astonished when he learned that he would not be allowed to. Mother tried to explain father's plan of being his own kind of Christian. Dr. Garden was agitated. He didn't seem to know what to make of this. He said it had never been heard of. Not even the apostles had admitted being baptized, he explained. If Mr. Day was going to set himself above the holy apostles, Mother felt more frightened than ever at this dreadful picture. That would be just like Father, she felt. That was exactly what he would do.